All right, and so we'll kick things off for today. Uh, First of all, thank you guys for joining us today in the third of our series. In today's coffee break series is entitled Collection Optimization. This is going to cover kind of an overall best practices in collection optimization. The preceding series are available on demand. The best practices in customer onboarding and credit assessment, and the best practices in customer risk management. I am Jay Daly. I'm with Dun Bradstreet and over in the partner side of the business as partner strategy. Our presenters today are going to be Chris Rios, former CFO and currently Vice President of D&B's Finance Analytics Solutions. Also, Adam Sig is joining us from Huron Consulting Group. Adam heads up the data management practice for Huron. And finally is Patrick Foy, who is Jitterbit's Director of Channel and Alliances. So welcome, guys. Thank you very much for joining us today. Starting off, I just want to touch real quickly on the session 2 highlights, which was, again, best practices in customer risk management. And some of the key takeaways from that, which will also kind of go back to a little bit today, is kind of gaining trusted insights with data and intelligence, and then using that and applying it to both receivable intelligence as well as portfolio management. And that incorporates not just within the finance end of the business, but also within other operating groups within the organization, such as sales and service.
Being here this morning, this afternoon. So as Jay mentioned, last session, we talked about the importance of portfolio management. And really what we're going to do as an extension of that is speak to all of the insights that we glean through portfolio insights are really meant to help inform collection management strategy. I cut my teeth in credit 25 years ago. I'm very familiar with the highest dollars, most days delinquent approach to collections. I'll leave you with a couple of thoughts as we go through the slide. But really, when we think about the insights that we glean from the portfolio, because if we're using predictive analytics within our portfolio, we're seeing the ebb and flow, the profile of our risk, changes. And as it changes, we should also be creating what I'm referencing here, if we look left to right, as intelligent workflows. But those intelligent workflows are driven based on collection prioritization. And historically, if you were to do any type of analysis, and there's a great free offer at the end we'll talk about in one of our IQ reports that can help you better understand the risk distribution of your portfolio. But applying those same analytics to how you prioritize collections, I think moves you closer to operational efficiency and what I like to call organizational optimization, which is a fancy way to say, as you free up your resources' time, they can focus on more value-added activities. As we continue moving to the right, some things that I don't think are considered automation, they seem pretty self-explanatory, but believe it or not, they do move the needle, even if only incrementally. So we talk about automated email reminders. That probably would have been a great question to ask. How many of you are actually generating or triggering automated emails in advance of an invoice due date and so many days after, and applying some level of risk assignment to that? Ideally, your low risk accounts, you'd want to initiate these email campaigns. And we're going to talk about even the potential of bringing your customers to self-service portals to make payments and retrieve copies of statements and invoices. But I want to focus on this idea of organizational optimization. As you start to free up the resources to work on more what I like to call value-add activities, think about disputes, right? Disputes, essentially any reason that a customer is giving you for not paying you. Now, the challenge there is, I know in my past life, 9 times out of 10, the issues were not necessarily something a collector could resolve. And by that, I mean, they're not going to resolve a pricing issue. At best, they're going to send an email to someone they think can help them in pricing. They may send an email to the sales rep. They may send an email to their manager. But think about even in that statement alone, there's 3 emails arbitrarily sent off to some degree, and then you're waiting for someone to respond, and that someone may not be the person to resolve the issue. Same thing happens with shipping issues, with incorrect units were shipped, or damaged goods were received, or outright something I didn't order, or it came in place of something I ordered. These are things that make the collections department really a central point of information gathering. But what you want to be able to do is quickly then push that information back out to the other operational owners who need to resolve the issue. And we're going to talk through some integration steps later on in the presentation. But imagine your collector sitting at their desk, they call their customer, and the customer says, "You guys priced this wrong. My unit prices are off by 15 cents. Great. I want to tag that item as a dispute. The reason code is pricing." And imagine a world where an automated email gets generated to the pricing department. There's no emails, there's accountability. You can track that information. You can start to measure response times relative to that outward push, and it's immediate. We're not relying on someone remembering to send an email. We're not relying on someone remembering to follow up on an email. Even though the process may encompass sending emails, the immediacy of that communication and the ability to track it systematically also adds to this idea of operational efficiency. And then, of course, just quickly here, when we talk about tracking user productivity, it's really about managers understanding what are my analysts' work queues look like today? How many calls should I be expecting go outbound? How many emails should I be responding to? How many dispute resolution items have I achieved? It's almost setting up your analysts for real-time feedback on their performance. But I also referred to this as gamification the other day. The idea that, collections can be thankless at times, but it's an important function within finance. It's critical to achieving cash flow objectives. But you want to make sure that, you as a manager, a supervisor, a director, executive level understand the workflows and who's achieving them, where the challenges are. But you want to keep those analysts motivated as well. And so that type of real-time feedback, being able to give them stats on performance, giving you stats on performance, imagine giving real-time constructive guidance to your team as they're working in their queues. That's really what this idea of tracking user productivity refers to. And then, of course, you'd expect reporting to be pretty standard. I need an age trial balance. I need to track my DSO. I need to have some free cash flow forecasting solution. I need to be able to identify, what my bad debt is and or what my bad debt provision should be, so I can help accounting establish that in accordance with policies, et cetera. I'll close out with this one comment. The idea that 9 out of 10 reasons a customer isn't paying is because of something other than financial distress. These are other factors that also contribute to deterioration of DSO. Incorrect billing, inaccurate pricing, incorrect invoices being sent to incorrect addresses is, I can tell you from experience, this is a bit anecdotal and may not be applicable in every setting, but in my previous role as a VP of Finance, we found that errors in the billing process contributed to a 3 to 5 day deterioration of DSO because customers are not going to pay an incorrect invoice. And by the time it's reconciled or rectified, you get that new invoice to a customer, that's when they start to apply the terms. It's as if in their mind, the cycle starts all over because you sent me something incorrectly first. So I don't care how long that took. When I get a correct invoice, I'm going to apply whatever my standard terms are. So you can see how that is not solved by collections, but can have an adverse impact on a key metric that collection groups use to really measure performance. If we can go to the next slide, please.
So Chris, I really like how you mentioned that the collections organization really establishes a trove of insights, a trove of root causes, and that history actually has value. That information has value. Building on the other 2 sessions we've had in this series so far, talking about establishing fundamental data, the identities of our customers, building on top of that foundation with portfolio or segmentation, now starting to blend that incredible value that collections has over the years. We can now start to build out those proactive ways to escalate, proactive ways to make sure we are leveraging the scarce resources of the collections organization to reduce bad debt, apply our energies where we're most likely to see payment happen. And so that's really where the partnership between Dun Bradstreet, the capabilities of their portal around account and collections management, can really be accelerated by saying, we know our customer base. We have our history, whether it's diversified by industry or diversified by geography. We've got a lot of payment history, a lot of collections history that we can start to use to gain intelligent insights to start building out, hey, where do we see early risk indicators? What industries or what cultures, what geographies respond well to relationship outreach? What early warning signals in the past have proven, I wish we would have jumped to dunning, or I wish we really would have jumped to legal outreach when we start seeing signs of bankruptcy per se. So all the things that for the folks that responded, working with days sales outstanding, working with dollar amounts to drive collection strategy, you've got all that history. Now we're able to start leveraging the power of kind of the D&B platform and start making some of those intelligent decisions to say, where can we most effectively invest our collections efforts? Or how do we start to proactively reach out through relationships because based on our history, based on our knowledge, we know and can recognize or infer some of those early warning signs. And that's really some of the work Huron has done in the industry, partnering with D&B as the execution platform, Huron as building out the analytical model to say, do we start recognizing early warning indicators? Do we start to build out a playbook that shortcuts certain policy steps because we are able to infer risk coming, problems coming in an industry or a geography, that we want to start getting ahead of it? And that way we can start to reduce bad debt reserves. We can start to reduce likelihood of losing a customer or unrecoverable debt. But kind of fundamentally coming back to establishing that identity, building out that portfolio, and then recognize all of you on the phone today have an immense amount of history, immense amount of detail for how you disposition each of these events. We can leverage that to start getting more proactive, more predictive on where do we invest our time, where do we invest kind of our limited resources. And that is all built and executed on top of what we're going to talk about next is some of the key components around D&B and the portal, their offerings for account and collections management.
Automate account reviews.
Yeah, so picking up off of where Adam left us, this idea of really automating account reviews is, if you think about as a supervisor or a manager, again, ensuring that your teams are working on what's critical to achieve whatever your organizational goals are. Namely, in this space, it's typically some level of cash flow, improved working capital, et cetera. And I appreciate that DSO is a measure of that. But there are tactical things that I think you can drive when utilizing predictive analytics. So as we think about, and if anyone joined, I imagine you joined the last couple of sessions, I like to use the term anticipatory, right? So how do we become equipped to better anticipate risk? We started last session risk within the portfolio, because then you can apply strategies. Well, those strategies become the activities that one can take to address the issues being identified in the portfolio. And the tendency is to talk about risk as if it were, only negative. We've got to make sure that we mitigate the negative risk. But reality is there's risk at many levels, and we'll use a simple low, medium, high risk scale. Low risk customers who have access to more of their credit facility or credit line that you've extended, that's information that can be shared with sales. And that's where synergies get formed between finance and sales. Likewise, for the high risk accounts, obviously, you want to make sure that you're attending to their credit exposure and perhaps even adjusting their credit capacity up or down depending on that related risk. But really, what this automated account reviews capability is, and an account manager is a module that D&B has in its suite of product solutions, but it's really meant to drive an organized workflow based on when we refer to intelligent, analysis of customers. We're really talking about applying key attributes, key analytics, key ratios, things that you otherwise might be calculating manually. We can provide in a more automated fashion, and you can apply whatever methodology either fits your policy or whatever your business practices are. We offer guidance on some of the best practices, but it's really meant to help supervisors, managers really ensure compliance and adherence to policy, right? That's a strong statement, because I'm sure many of you have had instances where one collector or credit and collections analyst operates one way and then another operates a different way. And while they may be successful, there may be some inconsistency relative to the policy. And I'm not implying that auditors are going to come in and shred the work. It's more about, how do you as a manager or supervisor or director or executive ensure compliance to the policy? Well, you do that by essentially building your policy into the technology. That allows you to do two things. One, it allows you to maintain your policy in real time and make quick changes as needed based on macro and micro economic events. But it also ensures that everyone, without them even knowing, to be quite honest, is coming into their work queue and they're addressing things in the order in which you believe is the most important to achieve the department's goals, the corporate goals, the global goals, whatever that may be. So I think we take something as simple as an analytic, and you can see the power. And by the way, there's a lot of quote unquote account manager solutions in the marketplace. The challenge with that is, one, there's probably too many and it's a saturated market, but two, there's not many that bring data with it. And in the absence of data, you basically have a nice car without the gas to go anywhere. That's the analogy I like to use. So think about account management as really the way to ensure compliance, consistency, adherence to policies and practices. But it also brings stability to the department, so that we don't have anyone operating in a rogue manner. We don't have anyone operating in some arbitrary way that you can't control because it's not systematically driven. That's the point to drive home. You can take everything that you do within your policy and build it as a rule set within the technology. And then through integration work that Patrick will speak to, and we'll have on other slides, we can talk about how we can take the data and not only make it available to the immediate user community, but how do we distill that down to actionable insights that we can push out to the rest of the organization, like namely the sales organization. So food for thought. I think any incremental step towards utilizing a predictive analytic or model versus something, the more traditional way of collections being highest dollar, most days delinquent. There is a bit of the comfort level has to be there. I think it's worthwhile asking as many questions as you can if you're going to just be introducing a model and coming from the highest dollar, most days delinquent process. But you will see incremental value immediately, because you'll start to have resources and their bandwidth open up to focus on other meaningful activities. Next slide. So sticking with the theme of collections, again, highlighting portfolio last webinar, we just touched on account management. Now we're getting into the actual tactical activities. And, everybody relies heavily on picking up the phone. And I'll be the first to say the best way to collect the debt pick up, short of going to the place that owes you, which is not not suggested these days, especially with everything going on in the world. The second best thing is picking up the phone. Well, what challenge do we have there? We're still living in a world of COVID. We know it's gotten significantly better. Some companies are going back into the office where you're calling someone at their desk versus their laptop or their cell phone because they're working remotely and they've got kids, dogs, pets, delivery people, spouses driving everyone crazy. And so, it's tough. So you have to think of different ways to remain in contact with your customers. And the most notable way outside of picking up the phone is really leveraging the analytics to drive strategies. So when I said it earlier, low risk customers, if they're low risk, that means one, the likelihood of them going out of business is very low. Two, the likelihood of them falling significantly delinquent over the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months is also low. And there's a strong likelihood that your payment experience from that customer is probably within terms or relatively close to terms. So why do we need to make a phone call? Why exhaust the resource picking up a phone and dialing 10 digits and waiting for someone on the other end? Start triggering those automated notifications. If they're low risk, they're likely to self-serve. They're likely to take that as a quick reminder, probably even thankful for not having to pick up a call regarding an open collections item. Think about the proactive nature of that process. Why not send them an email 10 days before their due date to say, hey, we value you as a customer. We love your business. Just letting you know that you got an invoice coming due in the next 10 days. If you need a copy, give us a call. If you need assistance because something is incorrect, give us a call. Anything that prompts them to just get in their mind, okay, good, I've got something. Now, on the flip side of that, the cadence and frequency at which you communicate via email to a high-risk account may be a more traditional dunning process, right? Where you start with that early reminder, but then the cadence is every 5 days after the due date. I'm going to get more aggressive with my messaging. I'm going to have a four quote unquote letter series. It's obviously an email. These things can all be driven by the analytics, by the models, but they can also be built into the technology. So when you start to think about templates and creating templates and branding them, you do that as a one-time effort. And now that framework is in place. All that's changing in that is the customer's name and the statement amount, or the customer's name and the invoice amount. But that's all, that can all happen systematically. That doesn't need to be done every time you want to send a notice to a customer. Risk-based prioritization, I won't belabor the point. It is what it states. It's risk-based. So if I know I have a greater likelihood of this portion of my customer base going delinquent in the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months, that's where I want to focus my attention, regardless of the value of the invoice, regardless of the number of days delinquent. It's believe me, when I first implemented solutions like this, it was tough for me to say, I've got a $500,000 invoice that's 45 days past due, but it doesn't meet the criteria of high risk. You're telling me not to call that customer? No, what I'm saying is, if you've implemented some of those automated strategies, you would have already been in communications with that customer. But as you progress through the series of steps within a strategy, there could very well be the need, regardless of the risk profile, if it hits a certain number of days delinquent, regardless of risk level, regardless of dollar value, that's going to kick out into the workflow of the collector. Very, very easily accomplished as you build out the strategies. You remain in control, regardless of if the first 3 steps rely heavily on an analytic or on dollars and days. You still control what steps happen in which order. And again, workflow management tools are simply, how do I track these things? Well, emails are timestamped. There's an audit trail in the technology itself. You go back to the account manager slide, your managers and supervisors are actually setting up the work queues based on the rules engine and the strategies that they're adopting that should be consistent with policy. So you can see how you're moving from the paper policy that may be stuck in someone's drawer that you look at best twice a year, and only when something bad is happening, to a real-time environment where the policy is driving the workflow is creating efficiencies, the efficiencies result in your team members being able to focus on more value-added activities. It's very much a build upon approach of step one, step two. We're not looking to skip steps. And with 55% of you not ready or not sure of moving towards something other than highest dollar, most days delinquent, that tells me that you're probably ready, but you need it to be in such an incremental manner as to not disrupt what you're comfortable with. And that's fair. But these are things that can be implemented at whatever pace you're comfortable. The starting point is just kickstarting the discussion around how to move that needle. And we can move that incrementally, as fast or slow as needed, based on the comfort level of the business.
Yeah, Chris, I love that point of you're still in control, with these automated processes, right? You're still in control because the policies, being driven through that technology. So in a way, kind of standardizing there, and we can crawl, walk, run. That's always a hesitation from anyone, looking to automate something, right? They're afraid to lose control, but that's why we love partnering with DNB, because of that. The flexibility and the way you can configure your rule sets is the same way you have the flexibility with our iPass platform, right? You can start and incrementally grow and mature, these automated strategies and workflows. So.
Yeah, great point. And that's really what, quick example, I already spoke to it, but it's this concept of let's send proactive reminders. Let's send reminders after, during, think about the life cycle of the customer, the life cycle of the billing and invoice journey. You can have as many reminder notifications go out as you desire. Typically, they're fewer for lower risk accounts, much more for significantly higher risk accounts. And then there's always a pool in the middle. And that's really also where you probably fostered stronger relationships. You know that there's some companies that are just going to pay you slow because they pay you slow. Others, need that little nudge. And then the phone call may be the most appropriate way. But again, you're certainly in control. And it's all about how you build out the rules engine, which is really just a replicate of your policy. And then the strategies, and that strategy is based on a combination of the predictive analytics, and it still incorporates the dollars and days. We're just adding, I would say, a more intelligent or intuitive aspect with the predictive analytic, or that model being incorporated into the steps within a strategy. Next slide. So I won't spend a ton of time here, but I said it early on. I think that the biggest opportunity for collections organizations, as they start to realize they have more bandwidth after you've implemented some of these automated and analytic type strategies, is digging into things like disputes. Again, I found in my career, most organizations know who the high risk accounts are in their account. I'm sure anyone could spout off the top 10 problem accounts that they have in their respective portfolios. So, most of us understand and know that I was fortunate enough to work for organizations where the bad debt provision was never more than, a percent of the total outstanding receivables. And in most cases, even less than that 1%. But where's the power in what collections does? Not just aggregating information, actually collecting that information, assigning dispute reasons, and ensuring that the technology itself is configured in a way that once that root cause is identified and you've assigned a dispute reason code to that item, it triggers an immediate workflow. It's not just capturing it for the sake of saving it as a note. There's an actual systematic action that gets taken. It can be date and time stamped. It can automatically set up a follow-up in your work queue. I mean, if you think about the amount of time, and there's the the collection function is very important, but I would say that not every action a collector takes is value add. By that, I mean, if you're working in a workflow that you make a phone call, you log a note, or you log a follow-up, or you achieve a promise to pay, these are all task-oriented manual activities. When you start to calculate the seconds, the minutes, the hours, the days, the weeks, the months, it's a lot of, again, manual task-oriented activities. If you already know that when you tag something in dispute for pricing, the pricing department needs to resolve that. So the system can be configured in a way to send that email to the pricing department. It can also be set up in a way that says, I'm going to set up a 2-day reminder in my collector's work queue so that if they don't hear back, that they're triggered to make a call out back to pricing. There's an audit trail that you hold accountability for that pricing person. But 3 or 4 of the manual steps I described a moment ago go away because it's the one-time effort of setting up the technology. So we talk about organizational optimization. That doesn't just apply to people. That applies to the technology as well. Make sure whatever technology you're using, you're optimizing all of its features and capabilities. So whether it's account manager, decision maker, dispute management modules, just know though that gas for the engine is the analytics. That's where it becomes a super powerful engine. Otherwise, you're basically working in a manual way. You're just doing it within different modules. So I think that's something that I like to drive home when speaking with customers. Apologies, Patrick. So based on those numbers, right, we're sending 62% of you are sending invoices electronically, but nothing else. Understandable. A lot of the enterprise solutions out there make that fairly easy. I think what this really speaks to taking it one step further. Think about the example I gave earlier where you have a low risk customer, you send them an email reminder. What if you had the ability to insert a link that would bring that user to a portal to allow them to self-serve, not just make a credit card payment, perhaps set up their bank account for direct debits or make a one-time payment of sorts, ACH, wire, bank draft, etc. Imagine they were able to self-serve and pull copies of their invoices, pull copies of an account statement, or even dispute an item. That's the best way. Get your customer telling you what's wrong, and you can really narrow down who needs to work the item. And I've used these solutions. I've helped build them out. There's certainly integration techniques and solutions that Patrick can speak to, but that's taking it to the next level. That's saying, I love the fact that I can email my invoices out to my customers. I don't have to worry and rely on snail mail. They get them quickly. Hopefully they're opening the email, they review them, great, and I should get paid, in theory, slightly better than if I was sending them a manual invoice. But again, the self-serve topic is really to say, take that beyond. Put some responsibility in the hands of your low-risk accounts and continue to build out those relationships, because if they're low risk, they're likely paying you anyway, and they may welcome the opportunity to never hear from you and simply self-serve. You may get some feedback that differs, but I think for the most part, low-risk customers are paying their bills anyway, and most welcome the opportunity to do it directly and have it be in their control. High-risk accounts, I'd say you can certainly still process them via the Dunning letter process, and you can still put a link into a portal. I think there's less likelihood if they're already experiencing financial distress that they're just going to welcome self-service. They'd probably rather you chase them and sit on their money. But definitely the idea here is to, again, incrementally move the needle. 62% of you, if you just said, how could I go about setting up a portal? Even if the portal was simply to say, your invoice is out here and we're giving you an opportunity to pay, without the bell and whistle of disputes and pulling down copies of documents. It's simply, think of the utility companies. They send me my gas and electric. They send me that email every month. It's a reminder. It's not due yet, but if I want to go and check it out, here's a link to the portal. Look at it. and self-serve. Sometimes I do,
Yeah.
sometimes I don't. I'm set up for direct debit anyway, so I know they're going to take the money when it's due, regardless of my proactiveness or not.
Yeah, Chris, we were talking about this the other day. I mean,
Yeah.
it's meeting the customer where they want to be met, right? And
Mhm.
kind of the nature now is to have that self-service and do it on your time. You can't always accommodate people's schedule when you're reaching out proactively. So we definitely see the portal as a great step to becoming more proactive, especially around disputes. Um, the example you gave earlier about billing mistakes, driving 3 to 5 days of DSO, that's huge. This is a way to cover more ground, be more efficient, and ultimately allow those analysts to have more time back in their day for, like you said, value added activities instead of kind of taking whatever comes across their queue.
Yep, 100%. Next slide. I'm not spending a ton of time here. I mean, it's the we talked about analyzing productivity, so you can look back at the previous slides, and I think there's more information there. Visualizing performance is, again, the productivity of the team, the productivity of the group, the productivity of the organization, seeing in real time how I'm performing relative to my cash goals. Typically collectors have cash targets set. Some have activities set that they have to achieve. So it may be a cash target coupled with number of calls, number of emails, number of disputes that are being resolved. That could be daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, whatever that case is. We have solutions that can help the visual performance, be available in real time. And again, through integrations, we can make it available to other areas of the business or up to executive management. Forecasting cash flow, I think, is huge. I think, the ability to see what money has come in from a collections perspective, what's sitting out there, obviously is important to most organizations. And the power of that is when you get that into the hands of your treasurer or controller, they can marry that up to their DPO on the payable side. They can marry that up to their finance and investing strategies and all of the information they have there. It's just helping get the executives one step closer to achieving their cash flow objectives, but having a better understanding in real time or as soon as possible without having to wait for the books to close at the end of a period. They want to see that daily, weekly, I would say, at a minimum, and they want to see it relative to not the individual collector's targets, but rather the organizational targets. So all these things are available in the technology we've been referencing, and again, encourage everyone to think about it, formulate some questions, and the group here is certainly willing to help answer and guide through any of those questions.
All right, thank you to all the presenters today.